These islands we call home have a rich and varied history stretching back thousands of years. But hidden under the ground and underwater are some amazing treasures just waiting to be found.
Wow!
So each year, all across the country, archaeologists dig, dive, and explore their way down. Oh, this is brilliant. Searching for fresh discoveries. And it is completely intact. Revealing traces of ancient cultures.
This shoe is 2,803 years old.
Oh, wow. And unearthing fascinating artefacts. Oh, that's a nice thing. What is it?
I've never seen anything quite like it in my career.
Every dig adds new pieces to the ever-growing archaeological jigsaw.
That's so cool, isn't it?
That is the epic story of our islands. This year, I visit digs in some extraordinary locations. The ceiling just got a bit lower. And I call on the help of a trio of expert investigators.
It's quite difficult to find any other evidence of things that just leave a mark in the archaeology.
This is a really powerful document because we're getting to hear the voices that we don't usually hear.
Who delve deeper to answer the questions raised by the finds.
Is all of this already recorded in books?
There was none of this in a book anywhere.
Finally, the archaeologists bring their most amazing discoveries into our tent. Astonishing! For up-close analysis. Genuinely rewriting history. Welcome to Digging for Britain. This time I'm travelling around the north of Britain to uncover the region's most exciting new archaeological digs. The largest single Roman building ever discovered along Hadrian's Wall.
Probably the star find of my whole career.
Shocks the experts.
Oh, wow!
And reveals links to a Roman emperor here in Britain.
The north of England would have been the centre of the Roman Empire.
Isn't that crazy? On a remote Scottish peak, a lost fortress pushes archaeologists to their limits.
It's the most challenging excavation type you'll get in Britain.
But uncovers remarkable new finds.
That's so cool, isn't it? You never find the other half of these querns.
And in Durham, a riverbed gives up its medieval treasure.
These pilgrim badges are incredibly rare finds for the north of England.
The north of Britain is home to one of the largest ancient landmarks in the country, Hadrian's Wall. Built after decades of brutal and bloody conflict with what the Romans called barbarian tribes in the north. The Romans built nearly 100 forts along its 73-mile length and stationed nearly 10,000 soldiers here on this dangerous frontier. Our first dig takes us to the western end of Hadrian's Wall, to Carlisle. I've come to Carlisle because, you've guessed it, I've heard about a fantastic dig that's happening in a very unusual place, Carlisle Cricket Club. Now, the club is nearly 200 years old, but the archaeology they're finding here is much more ancient. In 2005, the River Eden burst its banks and flooded the entire cricket club. Now the club want to build a new pavilion on higher ground. But being so close to Hadrian's Wall, they had to check the site for any archaeological remains first. And they called in Wardell Archaeology, assisted by a team of enthusiastic volunteers. They just expected to find some medieval rubbish. But what they've actually discovered is far more exciting. A huge Roman building full to the brim with Roman finds.
Piece of plaster. That would be Roman, that would be. Lovely piece of Roman glass, and you can just see the colour. It's a really lovely sky blue.
Something really special is going on here. So everyone's wildly excited. Brilliant.
Oh, so it's quite big.
Yeah.
Frank Jecko is leading this very surprising dig. So what is this building that we're looking at?
Well, we call it a bathhouse, but it's not a conventional bathhouse. It's 50 metres by 50 metres.
That's huge.
It is, and it's 2-storey.
How do you know it's 2-storey?
Some of the surviving bits of wall,
Okay.
they're about 1.20 m wide, and the foundations are at least 1.30 m deep, so
Okay.
it's huge.
So you know that that's big enough, solid enough to be supporting.
You wouldn't need that for a
two-storey
single-storey building.
Yeah. Now, I can see lots of intriguing archaeology over there. Can we have a bit of a tour?
Yeah, let's just come into sight.
This extraordinary Roman bathhouse is bigger than the trench. It is enormous. In fact, we think it's the largest Roman building ever found along Hadrian's Wall. A detailed 3D model of the site reveals a complex network of thick walls and spacious rooms. With underfloor heating or a hypercaust, the floor would have rested on these columns of tiles. And being a bathhouse, there are plenty of drains. But why would the Romans have built such a magnificent bathhouse up here at the far northern edge of the empire? The team are hoping to find clues, and the drains are proving to be a rich source. By painstakingly sieving sediment from the drains, they're discovering evidence of Roman bathers' lost property, engraved gemstones known as intaglios. Hello, hello.
What was the
We
excitement
heard a bit
about?
of excitement.
I found an intaglio here. Yes.
That's tiny. So that would have been set in a ring?
Yes.
The team have uncovered intaglios made from carnelian, jasper, and amethyst.
They're held in the rings with a vegetable glue that loses its stickiness in a sauna. So they just fall out.
So this would have been a standard occurrence at the bars. That you go
Totally,
to the
yeah.
bars, you get home and go,
Yeah.
my intaglio's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were clever, these Romans, but they needed to invent a better glue.
Glue, yeah, totally.
That is beautiful. These valuable personal items link us back to the actual people who once bathed here, wealthy Romans. And hidden among the sprawling ruins, the archaeologists are also uncovering unusual architectural details. Joe,
Hi.
what have you got there?
Got some lovely examples of vaulting tubes, architectural structures that fitted together and form part of the roof structure.
That's really clever. So terracotta tubes.
Yeah.
These tubes would have slotted together to create curved ribs to support a vaulted roof. Is it a standard way of building a bathhouse?
No, it's not. I think there's only 4 examples of vaulting tubes being used.
In Britain?
In Britain, yeah, that we've found. They're North African design.
Are they?
Yes.
So do we think that there are architects coming from that North African part of the empire?
I think that's the
here?
idea, yeah, I think that's the idea. This isn't a natural British way of building. So they had to have somebody who had the knowledge to make these and to build them in some sort of structures. Maybe they're part of the troops, maybe the architects came along with the design and they came with the structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This intriguing discovery of North African construction techniques and the evidence of numerous wealthy bathers is prompting more questions than answers at this stage. We'll catch up with the team in Carlisle later in the programme to see if the archaeology can explain why this luxurious bathhouse was built on the far edge of the Roman Empire. But for now, we're heading further north. In the rugged landscape to the north of Hadrian's Wall, the last of the free, the Caledonians, stubbornly resisted Roman occupation. But even these remote, beautiful locations are filled with clues of thriving ancient cultures. In Shetland, the Broch of Clecimin housed an Iron Age community more than 1,600 years ago. And the Callanish standing stones on the Isle of Lewis were first raised nearly 5,000 years ago, long before Stonehenge. The Romans never conquered Scotland and controlled the Scottish Highlands, and they built these great walls coast to coast to separate off the province of Britannia and protect it. And you can imagine them peering across the wall, looking out at that wild country full of barbarians, the Picts, as the Romans described them. Well, our next dig allows us to meet the Picts on their own terms. We journey to Benachie, 20 miles northwest of Aberdeen. Amongst the peaks of this isolated range is Mither Tap. Its commanding summit stands more than 500 metres above sea level. And perched on the very top is an astonishing stone fortress. Built by the Picts in the early medieval period. This year, an intrepid team of students from the University of Aberdeen is embarking on one of the most challenging digs in the UK, investigating the ancient ruins at the top of Mither Tap. These hills are among the first places in Aberdeenshire to get snow in winter. It's a particularly inhospitable location. So what were the Picts doing up here? The team want to find out if it was a temporary military camp or something much more significant. But it's a long way up.
Day 2, and this climb is not going to get any easier.
It's the most challenging excavation type you'll get in Britain.
So well done, you made it up the hill for the second day.
Just happy to be here.
I think they either love it or hate it. I don't think there's anything in between.
Gordon Noble is leading the dig.
We've opened quite a large trench, and we're just beginning to get down now to the settlement layers. And so this is hopefully where the excitement begins.
Our dig diary cameras capture the huge variety of finds emerging from the site.
I think it's a little bit of flint. There was an audible gasp escaped.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
yes.
You got good work.
Thank you very much.
A little bit of iron, a little bit of a tip of a nail, maybe.
And they've also unearthed half of a quernstone.
It's nuts to think that they'd have been grinding grain up here.
That's incredible, isn't it? Do we have a fines bag big enough for that?
No.
Right, just need to find the other half.
Hey!
That's so cool, isn't it? You never find the other half of these querns, so that's very nice.
Evidence that the Picts were grinding grain here could point to a more permanent settlement at this imposing location. The remains of two formidable stone ramparts encircle an upper and a lower citadel. It's accessed by steep steps. all built around a spectacular rocky outcrop in the centre. This year, the team are opening trenches in the lower citadel, looking for evidence of settlement here. And as the dig progresses, traces of Pictish life start to emerge.
What have you got there, Thomas?
It's a bantam boat. I believe it's cattle.
Tooth. Probably pig. Tells us that they're eating different things on site, they're butchering different things.
Pigs are often associated with high status, and they're usually quite a convenient animal for feasting as well.
And along with this evidence of fine dining, the team are also uncovering traces of industry.
Bit of burnt clay, and on one side of it, there's what looks to be vitrified material, almost like it's been used in the metalworking process. So we could have some sort of a metalworking area here, maybe. Oh my God, it's incredible.
The team is starting to build a more complex picture of life within the fortress. But they're finding themselves at the mercy of the elements.
We've got a thunderstorm moving in.
The realities of digging in northern Scotland.
Yeah.
With the weather closing in, I've asked Gordon to join me in the Digging for Britain tent to share everything he's learned about Pictish life at Mither Tap.
Gordon, this seems like a pretty incredible site. What were you hoping, what were you expecting when you first set out to dig there?
Well, it's one of the more extreme sites we've dug, that's for sure. And it must be one of the best preserved hill forts in Scotland. And now, on this hilltop, we're actually finding some of the best evidence for the kind of everyday lives of the Picts that we've got, really, from this region.
So what have we got here, then?
So we've got some of the indicators that this was a high-status location.
Yeah.
So we've got little tiny sherds here from crucibles. So these are the little clay vessels they're using to melt down bronze or silver and pour it into moulds, and this is what these are. Probably for casting a big penannular brooch, which would have been one of the big status symbols of the day. You know, the
I mean, that's
elites in
such a
society.
tiny fragment
It
to
is.
be able to know what this is and the relevance of it. And you're not finding the metal then, you're just finding the evidence that they were
exactly, yeah.
doing metal
We find
work.
some of the residues of metalworking, and these are bigger shards of crucibles here.
Yeah.
But they were the ultimate recyclers. They've taken away all the metal and left behind the things that weren't any use to them.
Yeah, metalworking right up on the hill. Does this suggest there's something more there than just a temporary military camp?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the extreme locations in Aberdeenshire today. It's the first place to get snow. But the evidence we're beginning to get into how these sites function certainly suggests that there are people living there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few other
Yes.
finds to look at here. What have we got here? They're intriguing. It looks like a couple of pebbles and then what looks like a tiny pyramid. Is it stone?
Yes. So we think they're gaming pieces. Again, it shows you that more about the kind of everyday lives of the Picts and some of the leisure pursuits.
Yeah, it's not all work.
It's not all work.
Helps bring them alive a bit more, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
And then this...
But it's actually Pictish pottery. And if you'd asked me a few years back were the Picts in this region making their own pottery, you would have said no.
Really?
Because there's so few sites investigated.
Yeah.
But now a few sites, including Mither Tap, we're beginning to find a native tradition of making their own pottery vessels.
So it's just been missed archaeologically in the
Well,
past,
it's just
do you
there's been
think?
so few sites found, and the way the Picts were building their structures tends to be in very ephemeral ways. So down in the lowlands, you can imagine they just get ploughed away.
Yeah.
But in these upland sites, because no one has intensively farmed these locations for obvious reasons, being 550 metres up, we're getting some of the everyday objects of Pictish lifestyles.
So this suggests that you've got these places which I think today might feel to us to be quite remote or difficult to get to, but actually they're quite familiar and lived in.
Yes, absolutely. And they probably had a completely different concept of what was marginal and what was central in that time period. I think, you know, this is incredibly visible from the region round about.
Yeah.
So you can imagine to actually place a hill fort on top, that would be a real marker of power and status, being able to do that.
It's a statement.
It is, yeah. And, you know, they seem to be like any other group in this time period, you know, warring societies, expanding their territories through conflict and conquest.
It's all sounding very Game of Thrones.
It is a bit, yeah. But it is fascinating to find out more about their lifestyles and their major sites.
The archaeology at Mither Tap is showing us that it wasn't just a temporary military outpost, but home to a thriving Pictish community all year round. Like the Holy Island of Lindisfarne in Northumberland and Rievaulx Abbey in the North Yorkshire moors, stand as reminders of the importance and wealth of the Christian Church in the north through the centuries.
Pilgrimage was really important in medieval life. There were pilgrim sites right across Britain and Ireland and routes connecting them. And if you really wanted to pull those pilgrims in, it helped to have a dead saint, or at least a bit of a dead saint. And this was big business. This was the tourism of its day. And there was a whole manufacturing industry that went along with it, providing merchandise for the pilgrims to buy. A wealth of artefacts for archaeologists to find in the future.
Our next investigation takes us to one of the most important Christian pilgrimage sites in England, Durham. Durham Cathedral, a wonder of Norman architecture, sits at the very heart of the city. It's home to the shrine of St Cuthbert, one of the most important early Anglo-Saxon saints in England. A prior and then a bishop, Cuthbert became famous for miracles after his death, and the pilgrims came flocking to his tomb. The Elvet Bridge dates back to the 12th century, allowing pilgrims to cross the River Wear on their way to the cathedral. And for more than 15 years, scuba diver Gary Bankhead has been working with the University of Durham to excavate the riverbed here.
To date, I've recovered over 13,500 typically small metal finds.
The riverbed below the bridge is full to the brim with small finds.
When I'm down underwater, the visibility actually isn't too bad. I only need to be able to see as far as my hands, and I'm underwater for about 2 hours. And during that time, I'll discover anything from 80 to 150 small finds. The process of excavating the riverbed is relatively straightforward. Just like archaeology on the land, things at the top are the most modern. But right at the very bottom, that's where the late medieval objects are.
Gary takes every object he finds to the University of Durham Museum, and many of them are providing us with connections to medieval pilgrims crossing the Elvet Bridge.
Ampulla for me are really, really exciting. They are pilgrim badges, often known or referred to as pilgrim signs. Pilgrimage was undertaken by people of all classes, and just imagine you visit a holy shrine, you'd like a souvenir. Today you'd probably buy a t-shirt, but in that medieval period they bought badges. The original form are of this type, so these are little lead ampulla, essentially vessels that were designed to hold either consecrated oil, holy water, or even dust, anything that had been associated with or in contact with the shrine of a particular saint. These were mass-produced objects, so they were relatively cheap. They were made of lead or pewter, crimped shut at the top, had little lugs on either side, so they would have been worn suspended around the neck. These are incredibly rare finds for the north of England. Ampulla in particular are very rare.
Gary thinks that these objects weren't just lost, they could have been deliberately left here.
There is an assertion that pilgrims would select specific objects to throw into a river as a thank offering for perhaps safe passage home. And given that we have so many pilgrim badges all found in a river, it just adds to this theory.
Some of the finds even suggest a specific link to the north of England's most important icon, St Cuthbert.
This particular object is absolutely amazing. It's a very small pectoral cross with equal length flaring arms. The form of this particular cross is incredibly similar to that of St Cuthbert's golden cloisonné cross. It is incredibly rare. It represents the only material culture evidence of pilgrimage to the shrine of St Cuthbert of Durham that's ever been found.
With this evidence of pilgrimage surfacing in Durham, historian Onyeka Nubia has come to the cathedral to investigate the real story of how the 7th century bishop, St Cuthbert, inspired a medieval cult.
I'm here at Durham Cathedral. Its spire is magnificent, it pierces the sky. And yet the foundation of Durham Cathedral isn't just rock and stone, it's based on a person, St Cuthbert.
I've come to meet Richard Gameson, an expert on medieval texts. He's unearthed some astonishing accounts hidden in the University of Durham Library, which can tell us about some of the earliest pilgrims to the shrine of St Cuthbert and the offerings that they would bring.
Hello, Richard.
Hello, good to meet you.
Hello. So we've got some fantastic, wonderful texts that tell us about the pilgrims and the pilgrimage that took place in Durham.
Yes, this here is the authorial manuscript of Simeon of Durham describing the history of the Church of Durham up to his own day, which was the very beginning of the 12th century.
Ah, so this book tells us about the enduring legacy of St Cuthbert, even though it wasn't written at the time of the life of St Cuthbert.
Yes, indeed. And this chapter explains a striking miracle that was accomplished at the site of Cuthbert Shrine. And we read here about a woman who's infirmi. She was crippled, but when she came to the place where Cuthbert's body was, she was healed.
Okay, so we have this idea from this story that St Cuthbert's is doing miracles from beyond the grave.
Yeah. And the point about a shrine is that you want people to visit it. By advertising these cases of healing, they spread the word of Cuthbert's potency and attract more people as pilgrims, as visitors to the shrine in hope of healing miracles.
So, not to be too cynical on this, is there a financial aspect to all these ideas of healing and miracles?
There certainly is, and this chapter highlights it, that when you came, it was expected that you were going to make an offering. Here at the beginning of this chapter, we read that on top of the tomb, there was a multitudinem denariorium, that there was a multitude of coins, and therefore your revenue stream is stronger the more people you attract.
Right. So, who had access to this shrine?
A good question, and in fact, this text answers that very precisely. This is what's known as the Rites of Durham, and it's explained here. The shrine was kept sealed into a cover which was locked. And we're told after someone has been identified as a VIP, it'll be unlocked and raised so you can see the shrine.
Fascinating. So we have differential treatment for different types of pilgrims. The ones who can pay more money have greater access than those who have less money And less
I'm afraid that's what it boiled down to. You would be within a foot or so of the cover of the shrine, but you would not see the shrine itself.
No matter how virtuous and faithful you are, you still can't get access if you haven't got money.
No. And halfway down, you can just about see that if an offering was silver or jewels, then it would be hung on the shrine. And if it is a stranger thing, such as a unicorn's horn or anything similar, that was kept in the ferretry. So it was kept within the sacred enclosure, but not actually on the shrine. The benefit you're getting is proximity to the saint. So if your offering is physically attached to the shrine, that's a hotline.
I see. So we can see here that pilgrimage was a universal practice, but practiced differently.
Absolutely.
The sources here are clear. Rich people thought that St. Cuthbert was their saint. But the archaeology gives us another story. Ordinary pilgrims, denied direct access to the shrine, made their meager offerings of lead ampullae and pilgrim badges to the river. And yet, ironically, it is those very humble offerings that have stood the test of time.
I dreamt I flew with the saints last night. I know them all by wing size, and up there it just doesn't count for naught whether you're clever or wise.
Next, we return to the grounds of the cricket club at Carlisle. The team here are still trying to understand why the largest building ever found along the embattled northern frontier of the Roman Empire is a luxurious bathhouse with exotic North African architecture. And lead archaeologist Frank Jecko believes they've made a breakthrough.
Well, this is where it gets really exciting. When we have this imp tile here, these are very unusual.
Oh, wow, look
So
at
you
that.
get legionary stamps, but this is the imperial court.
Isn't that fantastic? So I, M,
P.
P, all joined together.
Imperator.
Does that mean that the emperor's here?
Well, it means it's been a commission for the imperial court.
It means he's ordered it.
He's ordered it.
And which emperor, do we know?
Septimius Severus, I would put money on it.
Would you?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he was from Libya, and it links with the vaulting tubes that we have from this building.
Those are very unusual
Very
architecturally.
unusual. A lot of people are more excited about the vaulting tubes than the imperial stamp.
So he came from North Africa originally.
Yeah.
Septimius Severus was born in the year 145 in Libya, North Africa. He led military campaigns in Mesopotamia and Africa, and in 208 he arrived in Britain with more than 40,000 soldiers. His goal was to march north and finally conquer what he saw as the barbaric tribes on the other side of Hadrian's Wall. With this discovery of an imperial connection, it seems likely that this huge bathhouse was built for none other than Septimius Severus.
Wow! Look at that colour. What is it?
We think it's pigment.
Some kind of mineral?
It's up for debate. We thought it was, but they say it's now inorganic.
The experts agree that it's not quartz, but it's so unusual they have yet to pin down exactly what it is.
Oh, that's extraordinary,
I've
isn't
never
it?
seen anything like it. But if we have got purple pigment on this site, you can't get any more imperial than that, can you?
Because, of course, purple is the imperial colour.
Yeah, nobody else is allowed to use it. It was, you know, you'd be executed for using purple.
The emperor wore robes dyed purple.
Yeah, and this is a direct commission to the imperial court. We know Septimius Severus was up in the north of England. He comes up with his wife and his children. So for a short while, the north of England would have been the centre of the Roman Empire.
Isn't that crazy? The capital, effectively.
Yeah,
because the emperor's
imperial
here.
court was here with his family,
Yeah.
The evidence is suggesting that this spectacular bathhouse may have been used by the Emperor Septimius Severus himself and his court. And our Dig Diary cameras capture the moment the team make their most monumental discovery.
We've just found this, what we thought was a large boulder, but on the other side, there's a sculptured face of a lady. So we're incredibly excited. This will be the first sculpture we've had from our site. And I think we're just about now at the point of lifting it and turning it over. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow!
Oh my gosh!
Incredible. It's stuck in more water.
Stunning.
We've done it in the hairstyle.
Yeah.
Well, look at the hair here.
Yeah.
This is braided hair.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very excited. This is our star find, probably the star find of my whole career.
As the lucky volunteers continue to dig, they make another huge discovery.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
Woo!
Wow.
Yeah.
Another one.
I got another one.
These are absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, stunning.
Wow. They're very weird. They're very, very strange. Is there anything like them from
Nothing.
Roman Britain?
No.
And a very strange style.
And a very strange style. The question is, who are these people they're representing? You know, are they gods? Are they the emperor and empress? And the current thinking is they're theatrical masks.
But why would you have theatre masks on a baths?
Well, you have them because they're sort of good luck things. So when you're naked in a bathhouse and vulnerable, they're sort of there to protect you. So that's the idea. So it's like to ward off evil.
Yeah. And then, you know, it's not beautiful sculpture, but it's really effective, isn't it? I mean, you can see that it hasn't been finished. You can see the tool marks, all these little peck marks here.
Yeah, not meant to be seen from behind.
So presumably they're meant to be seen from a distance? Like...
Yeah, if you could imagine, it would be 2.5 or 3 metres away on a wall of a building.
Yeah.
From a distance. You would never notice that. You'd just see the exaggerated eyes and nose and the mouth.
Yeah. I mean, could they have been on a building with one on each corner? Do you think you're likely to find another 2 down in the trench?
That would be fantastic. There's potential still down there.
I think they're extraordinary. I love them. What an incredible dig, showing us the apogee of Roman civilization and all their finery and luxury. But we need to remember why that emperor was here. He's about to launch a reign of terror in Scotland. So set against those beautiful objects and this astoundingly magnificent bathhouse, we've got the beginning of one of the most brutal and violent periods in The landscape of Britain is littered with abandoned and forgotten settlements. Some of them even have their own acronym, DMV, Deserted Medieval Village. There are lots of reasons for a place becoming abandoned. It could be disease, like the Black Death. It could be a change of land use, a rich landowner deciding to boot people off to make room for more sheep. Or it could be climate change and crop failure. Working out which factor is responsible has always been difficult, but now, with new scientific techniques, we have the potential to do just that.
Our next dig takes us to East Heslington, 20 miles southwest of Scarborough, and an Anglo-Saxon settlement, which was abandoned in the early medieval period. A team of students from the University of York are hoping to get to the bottom of the mystery of the disappearing settlement at East Heslington.
This field has been completely surveyed using geophysical techniques.
Dominic Pausland is leading the dig.
And we can see a whole series of blobs like these, which are all over the field, quite widely spread. But if we were looking at an Iron Age or a Roman or even a Bronze Age or a medieval settlement, we would expect to see trackways, field systems, property boundaries, and all the things that make up what we would probably see as a village. Early Anglo-Saxon settlements do not look like villages. And it's not just here, it's all over Britain. Why do these things look so different?
The fact that these Anglo-Saxon settlements never developed into more substantial villages with interconnecting roads suggests that they were mysteriously abandoned soon after they were established. But the team are finding objects that the people here left behind.
This is a piece of early Anglo-Saxon pottery. So you've got these ribs with little marks in them, and there's multiple, so they've probably been decorated using a bone point. And then this is the end of a composite bone comb. So they're made out of multiple sheets of bone. This one has just come out, so it's still covered with soil. It has no extra decoration, but what a lovely shape. They're really beautiful bits of personal equipment.
Dominic thinks that the abandonment of East Heslaton may be linked to a change in climate.
I believe the event that triggers these changes in Anglo-Saxon domestic settlement, or stop them developing, is what we call the late antique Little Ice Age. This site may have just died out, and it may have died out due to bad weather.
The late antique Little Ice Age was a period of rapid climate cooling in the 6th and 7th centuries. It's possible that this cold spell was caused by distant volcanic eruptions. Large clouds of volcanic ash can block out the sun, causing temperatures to plummet and crops to fail. Could that explain the abandonment of Anglo-Saxon East Heslaton? If a volcano was to blame, perhaps there could be evidence at the site. Project lead Nikki Milner is looking for clues.
So I'm going to be taking some samples.
Tephra is volcanic ash and cinders, and tiny particles can be carried in the air far from the site of an eruption.
We don't need a lot. The tephra is very, very small, and we can just put a small sample like that into a bag, which will then be sent off to the specialist to see if there's any tephra within it.
This is a piece of new research. Nobody's done it on archaeological sites of this period before. But if we can correlate the events with the archaeology, I think we're in a very good position to start reassessing the whole of early Anglo-Saxon England. Let's put it that way.
The sediment sample from East Heslaton has been sent to Simon Blockley at Royal Holloway University for analysis. Bioarchaeologist Kat Jarman has headed there to find out the results.
Simon is pioneering a technique to look for tephra for the very first time on an Anglo-Saxon site. Hi, Simon.
Hi, come in.
Thanks. And he's going to show me how it's done. So, Simon, we're talking about tiny little microscopic pieces of ash that can't be an easy thing to actually find.
It's incredibly difficult. If we find a volcanic glass shard, it'll be about 100 microns across, which is a tiny amount. It's about the thickness of one of your hairs.
Right.
So what's new about this is we're looking for it in an Anglo-Saxon archaeological site, and that's really, I think, never been done before.
It does look quite challenging, but can I have a go?
Please feel free, yeah.
OK. What exactly am I looking for?
Yeah, so the first thing to think of is try and look for something that makes you think glass shard. And then also fluted, elongated nature. They're classic features of a tephra shard.
Some of them look similar, don't they?
They do. You get quite a lot of mimics.
Yeah.
But you, over time, you learn to identify what is tephra. So
just to spot them. Yeah. Gosh, you can see. No. OK.
As I said, hey, you go look at that.
That one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done. You found a needle in a haystack. But the linear structure and the elongated features, all of that is an absolutely classic example. Well done.
Excellent. Thank you.
This is all from your archaeological site, so it's the first time I've ever found tephra in an Anglo-Saxon archaeological site. It's really incredibly rare to do.
So this is exciting for you as well?
Hugely exciting. It's evidence that there was definitely a volcanic eruption when this archaeological site was being abandoned, which is quite important. It's real physical evidence.
Yeah, it's really exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazingly cool.
Finding tephra within the sample proves the settlers at East Heslaton had to deal with a volcanic ash cloud descending on them. And with chemical analysis, Simon is even able to determine which volcano was the culprit. So what exactly are we looking for in this chart then?
So this is a chemical plot that summarises the chemistry of different volcanoes. First of all, somebody has to go to the volcano to take samples from close to the volcano and analyse the chemistry. And then this plot is a plot of tephras that have been found in England, but have been correlated to different Icelandic volcanoes. And so down at the bottom left, we have products of the Torfajökull volcano and the Katla volcano. Over to the right, we have the red, which is the Hekla volcano. And then at the top, we have the green, which is the Askja volcano. And our Heslaton data, the yellow, plots closest to the Askja tephra layers. So we can say quite confidently, actually, that this is an eruption from Askja, which is really interesting because no one's found an eruption from Askja at this time yet, until now.
Brilliant. So this is a brand new volcanic eruption that we didn't know about.
Absolutely, yeah. That's very, very exciting. But it also allows us to say that there's an Icelandic volcano erupting at the time that this site was being abandoned.
The Askja volcano is hidden away in the remote highlands of Iceland, nearly 1,000 miles from East Heslaton. It's known to have erupted in 1875 and in 1961, but now, thanks to Simon's work, we know Askja also erupted in the 6th century, and that its ash cloud extended all the way to Britain.
We do have historical accounts and evidence of what happens when you get Icelandic eruptions, and you basically get 1 or 2 years of cold, wet summers. That means you don't grow crops. And if you get 2 years or so of not growing crops, a population like that could be in trouble.
That's really, really interesting, because it's quite difficult to find any other evidence, isn't it, of things like crop failures. It just doesn't leave a mark in the archaeology.
Not in the archaeology. What we have at this site now is we have a tephra that says at least it's possible.
Which is amazing.
It is, yeah.
These tiny dots on a computer screen are the first direct evidence of events significant enough to traumatize early Anglo-Saxon communities and force them to leave their homes.
Clouds of volcanic ash from Iceland may have caused upheaval in the 7th century, but 400 years later, hordes of Norman invaders from France had an even bigger impact on the Anglo-Saxons. And that story has brought me to the village of Lowther, 4 miles south of Penrith. Here, hidden among the fells, waters and forests of the Lake District, is Lowther Castle. It was built in 1806 by William Lowther, the 1st Earl of Lonsdale, and at its height, it reputedly had 1 room for every day of the year. Today, the castle is undergoing a transformative restoration.
It looks like an ancient ruin, but it's only 200 years old. It was lived in by a few generations of the Lowther family, and then in 1957, the then Lord Lowther was running out of cash, and so he demolished it, or at least he took the roof off and he took a wrecking ball to some of the walls, and so now it just sits here in the landscape as a rather romantic ruin. But there's a much older story playing out in the grounds.
The history and influence of the Lowther family is well documented back to the century. It's thought that they took their name from the River Lowther, which still flows through the estate today, and traced their origins to a descendant of the Vikings who arrived here in 1150. But this area is not mentioned in the Domesday Book. In fact, there's no written evidence at all for what was here in the early Norman period.
You get to a point where the historical records just run out and we can't find out anything more about this place. Apart from, of course, we can, because that's when the archaeology comes in.
Now, a team of students from the University of Central Lancashire is investigating a mysterious feature hidden in the castle grounds. The lead archaeologist is Jim Morris.
Hello.
Hello.
What are you doing down here? The castle's up there.
Wow. It does look like the castle should be up there, but what we're doing down here is actually we're looking at the medieval origins of Lowther.
Deep in the woods, Jim is investigating a huge ditch and bank earthwork, more than 10 metres across and 8 metres high.
It was completely overgrown, so we've cleared all this undergrowth.
He believes that this earthwork predates any historic record for the area.
So are we walking through the original entrance here?
We think, yes, that this is the original entranceway.
OK, and there's a lovely cobbled floor which is coming up.
Yes, and we think we've got this spread across the whole interior.
So it's a yard.
Yeah,
inside
that's
here.
a really nice way of thinking about it.
And you've got a section right through the bank there.
Yeah.
Can we go and take a look at that?
Yeah, of course I can.
This raised, cobbled area is surrounded on all sides by steep slopes, perfect for defending the interior.
I mean, they're quite impressive, aren't they?
They are quite impressive. From the interior, quite small, but actually you can now see they're actually quite substantial ramparts, especially on this side.
I think they're formidable.
Yes.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of moving of earth.
It is, but it's not very technical.
Yeah,
So actually, the reason we've cut this trench across and we've kind of gone down through is to look and see how this mound was all created. So what we've found is layers of stones, then a big mass of clay, then another layer of stones, and a big mass of clay, and then another layer of stones going on up. So relatively simplistic, actually, to construct.
Yeah.
It's like a Mott and Bailey, but without the Mott.
Without the mound in the middle.
Without the mound in the middle, yeah. So in effect, you've got the Bailey part.
Yeah.
Jim believes this simple earthwork has the hallmarks of an early Norman castle. But that's difficult to appreciate from the ground.
So having chatted to Jim and also sitting up here so I can get a really good idea of the shape of it, I've drawn what it would have looked like. The trench that they've put through the ramparts, that's through this part just here. And Jim thinks there would have been a timber palisade which runs all the way around the ramparts on the top. We've got the entrance down here, which would have been guarded by a gatehouse. And then perhaps a tower up here where I'm sitting, with this commanding view over this little Norman fort.
This seemingly important site isn't mentioned in the Domesday Book, which was written 2 decades after the Norman conquest. So, to investigate when and why the fortress was first built here, medieval historian Sophie Ambler has been trawling through the Lowther family's personal medieval archive.
Sophie, hi.
Hi, hello.
Ah, so these are the historical documents. What do they actually say?
Well, they tell us a little bit about the landscape of the site because they are portioning up very small portions of land, an acre here, half an acre there.
Yeah.
And this one here is particularly special because we can date it. So this is given at Lowther on the Saturday after the feast of Easter in the year 1278.
Wow.
So it's given at Lowther, which means it was given here in the Villa of Lowther, probably very close to where we're standing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is absolutely wonderful.
And if we look here at this one, so this charter dates to the 1280s. And it's a charter drawn up for Alice, daughter of Peter of Thrimby. She's renouncing her rights in half a rood of land. That's 1/8 of an acre. Can you see above the castle? Can you see Castellum? Just here on the fold of the parchment.
Yeah. So do you think that castle is the one in the woods?
I think it's very likely that this is the castle in the woods.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that in the 1280s, this castle was still standing then. The people living in the village recognised it as a castle and they were using it as a local landmark. It might not have been in use then, but it's definitely there.
But who built that castle?
This is the big question. This is the big question. Now, in Cumbria, we have very little written evidence for the Norman period.
Okay.
And that's because Cumbria was not conquered in 1066 by William the Conqueror.
When was it conquered?
So it was conquered in 1092.
Oh,
by
really?
His son, William Rufus, who led the conquest of Cumbria in 1092. Cumbria was an independent kingdom. It wasn't part of the Anglo-Saxon kingdom that we know from southern England. William Rufus led an expedition to Cumbria, and then he sent peasant men with their wives and children from the Norman regime in southern England to Cumbria.
Yeah.
So it's effectively a plantation settlement and a way of colonising Cumbria. And we're speculating that this site could be the first stage of the Norman conquest and settlement of Cumbria, because that's the sort of castle type that we would expect to see in rural conquest.
Oh, it is fantastic. What an amazing archive to have.
Occupying forces through history have established control with fortresses before sending in settlers to colonise the region. It seems this medieval settlement at Lowther was no different. Could this hastily constructed wood and earth fortification have been the vanguard of the Normans' final victory over the independent Kingdom of Cumbria, more than a quarter of a century after 1066?
What a fantastic story. It's wonderful to be here just as the very first archaeological investigation of this castle is happening. There's more to find out, of course, there always is, but we're already learning so much about Norman Cumbria.
Next time on Digging for Britain, I join a dig revealing secrets beneath Leicester Cathedral.
How fantastic to have found this sacred object in this sacred place.
It's an incredible find.
Historian Onyeka Nubia investigates what life was like for women in a forgotten nunnery.
6 nuns have run away.
Phenomenal number.
And from an RAF airbase, beautiful Roman pottery.
This is the first time that somebody's held this in their hands.
Since they put it in the ground.
1600 years ago.